Hello everybody and thank you for joining me. This is Sierra from Sierra T Designs and today I have the February card kit unboxing from Simon Says Stamps. So let's take a quick look at what's inside and then we can jump into making some cards. So it does come with this really cool bag, the red version of it. You guys have seen that I have the teal one. It's come in other kits. So I love that. I do actually really like the mesh bags. I keep the kit in them while I'm creating with them so that I don't lose any pieces. All right, so let's open this up and see what we've got. Oh, my package of embellishment seems to have come open. That's okay, everything was in that bag, so I didn't lose anything, which is great. So I do have a package of the Tim Holtz, I think it's locks and keys. Charms, I think it's locks and keys. I'll have to put them all back in the little container, but here they all are kind of strewed across here. So that's okay. We'll have to find kind of a neat way to use those. I'm not totally sure how to use those, so that'll be an interesting use there. And then of course we have a sucker. We always have a sucker in there. And let's grab the idea sheet and that'll give me an idea of exactly what's in here. All right. So we have the Simon Dot Runner. If you guys know me, you know that I struggle a little bit to use anything but liquid glue, so it's always fun to get these and try them out. So I have a dot runner, and then we have this super cute small stamp set. This is the 3x4 Simply Thank You stamp set. So that's great, a whole bunch of really great sentiments, which you can never go wrong with. And then we have the $5 off coupon if anyone wants to use that. It's expiring March 1st, but you can still use the coupon there. So that's great. And then we have the Miss You wafer die. So that's pretty cute. Check that out. Oh, so that's pretty nice. And then we have a couple of envelopes here. I think we have mint green and cotton candy. These are the, this one's a lick 'em to stick 'em and that one's a sticker. Okay, that's good. And then we have some cardstock here. We have one piece of the super shiny pink. I believe this is Simon's too, actually. Let me see. Yep, 1 6x6 glitter paper. So it could have been any color, I guess. So yeah, this is the Simon Says Stamp brand. I got this really pretty pink one. And then we have 12 sheets of Simple Stories Happy Hearts 6x8 double-sided cardstock. So we can take a quick flip through these. There's usually beautiful images in these pattern papers, stuff that you want to kind of almost just frame and put on the wall because it's so pretty. But yeah, this is neat. That could be really cool for background. Ooh, I just want to write a letter on there to my pen pals and mail it out. I might actually do that. All right, so some beautiful stuff in here. Oh, and then some images you could just trim out. I think Christina Warner did a video where she just trimmed these out and created some really cute cards with them. So there's that. That's pretty cool. And then of course we get to the like main part of this whole beautiful kit, and this is the Orchid Rose Bouquet stamp set. Of course, it's stunning as they always are. Big 6x8 stamp set, beautiful. And then our cardstocks. So we have Surf Blue, Cotton Candy, Fog, and Mint in this kit. So a very beautiful pastel-y kit. So there you go, guys. We're going to jump into making something. All right, let's jump right into the first card. So I'm going to cut down a mat for my first card. I'm going to cut it out of that Fog cardstock, and I will cut it just slightly smaller than an A2 size base. So it's about 1/8 of an inch smaller. And I'm going to use a piece of pattern paper for this card. So with this kit, because it really only has one large floral image, I did really try to focus on using some pattern paper which if you guys know me, know that I struggle a bit with using pattern paper. So there's a few cards in here that focus a bit more on the pattern paper and a little less on coloring, because coloring is something that I tend towards. So there will be some coloring, but I did try really hard not to just color every card with this pretty floral. So I did trim down a piece of pattern paper in the stamp set, or in the pattern paper set, and then I'm going to stamp the image onto it. So this is one card that's going to have a little bit of Copic coloring in it. So I'm going to use my Memento Tuxedo Black, which is a Copic friendly ink. This cardstock is not, or the pattern paper is not really meant for Copic coloring. However, it did actually lend itself fairly well to it. So I don't think that it really bled. I didn't do very much Copic coloring for this, but This isn't the cardstock I would normally choose to do Copic coloring on. However, it handled it pretty well, so I was pretty impressed by that because it didn't bleed through or do anything weird. But I am going to bring in 2 colors of pink. I have RV00 and RV02, and all I'm going to do is color the rose petals. I do the lightest color, so the RV00 as my base, and I do leave the tip of the petal white, or this color pattern paper, sorry. This pattern paper is a little bit of more of a cream than a white, so it kind of adds a tone on its own. So I just did the 2 colors, and I'm just going to do the rose that you see me coloring here. I'll only show you a few petals. And then I am also going to color the rose that's kind of sitting behind the orchid. And I just kind of selected one piece of the stamp for this card. I mean, this stamp is large. I think it actually fits a 5x7 card fully, but I didn't really want to do that because I'm trying really hard not to do a lot of Copic coloring these videos because I can't show you the coloring. So for people who want to see that, I can't really show it in these videos because there's not enough time, but I did leave the stamp in the exact position in my Misti so that I could go back in with my VersaFine Onyx black ink and stamp it out again to get a way bolder black outline. I find Memento Tuxedo black ink, once you've Copic colored over it, kind of starts to fade, and I really wanted a nice, rich, vibrant background, stamping of the image. So then I brought in my Simon Says Stamp A2 thin frames dies, and I cut a frame out of the glitter cardstock that came in the kit. And I kind of went back and forth on whether or not I wanted to inlay the frame or if I wanted to just kind of adhere it on top of the colored panel here. And in the end, I do decide that I wanted to inlay it. So we're going to cut the same thin frame out of the panel that I've colored here as well. And then we're going to kind of insert that little frame into the panel. Now, this frame is very delicate, very dainty, so it's not going to go in perfectly straight. I think it's difficult to notice, so I'm not too concerned about it other than I'm telling you guys, so you're probably going to be able to tell. But it's not a huge deal, honestly. It's not quite straight. Like, I'm looking at the card right now as I do the voiceover to talk to you guys, and it's not quite straight. But, I mean, you'd have to spend a lot of time staring at it to even really notice that. So while I'm adhering this, and this is probably an easier way to do this than what I'm doing, but I adhered my large panel in the center and kind of adhered that down to my fog mat. And then I'm going to adhere the frame around it. So I did eyeball this, and I did jump between my Nuvo Deluxe glue and my Barely Art glue. This is just because one has a fine tip. And because this frame is so delicate, it just made it easier to not get glue everywhere. But I mean, any glue would work for this, really. I just think the liquid glue is the best because it gives you some wiggle time. So you have a few seconds to kind of move it around and get it into position before it actually adheres. And then I'm going to have to adhere the outer layer to kind of get that whole frame inside of the panel technique. So I do also have to adhere that. And again, I ended up trimming off a little bit of my fog mat just because it wasn't straight. So to kind of trick the eye, I do end up taking this to my trimmer, and I just trimmed off a little bit of it. And then I brought in a sentiment from the same stamp set, and I'm going to stamp it down in, this is Picked Raspberry. I forgot the color name there for a second. This is Picked Raspberry, and I just chose it because pink was kind of the focal of this card. Gray tones, black tones, and pink. So I just stamped that down right over the bottom of it. It goes over the floral perfectly. It looks really pretty, but it doesn't steal the show. I think the eye catcher in this is that glitter frame in the end, which wasn't quite my intention, but I think it turned out really pretty. So I'm happy with it, and I don't mind that at all. And then I did bring in some Vanilla Luster Sequins by Studio Katia. These are kind of a very creamy rainbowy type sequin. You'll see when I hold it up here in a second. But this kit didn't come with any embellishments that were like sequins or gems or anything like that. So I kind of got to go into my stash and use whatever I wanted to use. And of course, because everything needs to be as shiny as possible, I brought in my clear glitter pen and I just added it to the area of the petals that were colored pink, making sure that I didn't go over my VersaFine Onyx black ink because actually, no, it would be fine because it doesn't activate with water. The Memento Tuxedo black would, but I don't touch the black lines, so it doesn't really matter in the end anyway. And theoretically, you should have done this before you stuck the sequins down so you could stick the sequins, but I didn't think about it, so I did it afterwards, and I just went around the sequins that were sitting on top of the roses, and it turned out pretty fine. And then I am going to have to adhere this down to the panel, so I'm going to do that with the same Nuvo Deluxe glue. I do have a tendency to jump between Nuvo Deluxe and Barely Art glue. They are by far my favorite liquid glues, and yes, this kit came with a tape runner, and yes, I forgot completely about that and didn't use it on any single card that I made, just because I'm so used to using liquid glue that I usually forget that it's even there. So you should maybe use the tape runner, but I completely forgot and didn't use it. And then here's a close-up look of this card, and I did add a few things to the center as well. I did that on a couple of the cards from today. And then we're going to jump in to the second card. So this one is all pattern paper. I was trying really hard, like I told you guys earlier, to use the pattern paper. So I grabbed this one sheet, and one of my supervisors showed up to make sure that my fussy cutting was up to snuff. So I did grab this sheet, and I'm going to trim out all of the elements of this, and I'm also going to use the sentiment from this piece of pattern paper. I'm going to fussy cut one image on screen here for you. The rest I'll do like without showing you. It's not rocket science. I know some people really don't enjoy fussy cutting, and that's totally fair. It's not for everybody, but I just find this is easier when you can't get your hands on dies, or in this case, it's pattern paper. There's a die in the set, but it's a sentiment. So this kind of just allows me more freedom with the items that I have, and I honestly don't really mind fussy cutting. If you struggle, I think leaving a white border around your image makes it vastly easier, but completely up to you. You don't have to make pattern paper cards if that's not your thing. And then I did trim them all out, and then I pulled in this piece of pattern paper here as well. I am going to make an A2 sized card for this, and I am going to mat it. So I'm going to cut this down to be about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my mat, which will be about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my A2 base. I don't do exact measurements because honestly 3/4 of the time I eyeball it because I'm way too lazy to actually measure things out real well. So this is just personal preference by all means. There are measurements on the trimmer, so you absolutely can. I just have a tendency towards being lazy when it comes to that. So I did trim out a piece of the surf blue cardstock from the kit, and that's going to work as the mat for this. I just love how these colors look together. They're all so pretty. I love pastels, so even though I generally end up doing very bold, vibrant colors, I still love pastels. I just have a heavy hand when adding color, so I struggle to not just add all the color all the time. And I did use my liquid glue to adhere this down. Now, had I been thinking, I would have done this in more of a landscape aspect, but I've literally made every card in a portrait style. So that's why the image is kind of funny. The picture has them all kind of lined up so that it looks nice, but none of them are actually in a landscape layout. So don't ask me why I did that. I have no idea. Usually I'm pretty good about breaking them up, excuse me, and giving more of a look, but I forgot. So everything is portrait. And I just laid out my images how I wanted them on the card, and then adhered them together because I knew these 3 images were going to sit in the back with the sentiment sitting on top of them. And everything is going to be flat laid down at this point, so I'm going to do it just all with my liquid glue until we get to the focal images. Well, they're all kind of a focal image, but until we get to the smaller images that are sitting off to the left-hand side there. With them, I am going to bring in some thin 3D foam squares to add, just to give them a little dimension, but not so much that it wouldn't fit in an envelope if you wanted to mail this to someone, which hopefully you do. I tend to mail quite a few cards. I know I've heard lots of people tell me that they don't mail them, which always surprises me a little bit, because I would think that you'd end up with this huge stash of cards that then what do you do with them? I mean, some people sell them, I know that, but I have a tendency to just mail them to people I think would enjoy them. So, and then here you can see, I'm sorry I get out of frame a little bit there, but I just added some 3D foam squares to the back, and then I'm going to adhere down my cupcake kind of on top of my sentiment so that there are a few different layers to the card. And then my little cookies are going to be also layered up with some 3D foam squares. And I did also adhere them together the same way I did the elements that go in the background. And then I just kind of lean them against the other images and sit them on top of the sentiment strip that I've adhered to the bottom as well. Now, because this is a fairly simple card, I do have to bring in all the sparkles. So I am going to adhere it down to the A2 card base to start with, and then I'm going to bring in everything that's shiny. I promise you that pretty much every card in this ends up with some glitter pen and some sequins and some, like I can't stop myself, and I love all the shiny things. So I have a tendency to just bring them in. So I brought in my Spectrum Noir glitter pen here again, and I'm going to use it on all of the cherries on the little, like the cake and the cupcakes and this milkshake. And then I also add it to the frosting in the cookies. I guess they're actually macaroons, but I've heard it macaroon and I've heard it macaron. So I'm just going to call them cookies. And then I can't say it wrong, right? So I just added it to the icing of the little cookies there as well. And then I brought in the same vanilla luster sequins from the first card and just kind of adhered them across the panel. I generally lean towards top left corner to right bottom corner. That is generally how I like to lay out my sequins, just because it's really appealing to my eye. But there's no wrong way to add sequins, really. I think as long as you're happy, that's really all that matters. And then I am going to, I believe I did something on the inside of this card as well, although I'm not going to show that to you until we get to the end. But I did trim off the little piece of the platter that was sticking off of the card. That just kind of gives it a little more interest. And then I'm going to hold it up here so you can check it out. I think it turned out pretty cute. I mean, it's a pattern paper card. I don't know. I always kind of end up feeling like I'm cheating when I make pattern paper cards. I have no idea why I feel that way. It's not. It's still creative and it's still really neat. I feel like I need to create everything, right? Like I have to do the background and I have to do the focal and I have to do I end up feeling like I'm cheating when I do it. So I have no idea why, but that's how I end up feeling. So this is a few days later. I made those first two cards like Monday, I think, and then I made these two cards Wednesday. So I had a nail change in the middle of that, but we're going to make a mini slimline card. So I cut down the base there. You saw that I generally prefer to make my slimlines 3 by 6 inches when scored. So the cardstock is cut 6 by 6 inches. And then I'm going to use the pattern paper in this card as well. So I'm going to cut out 2 pieces of the pattern paper. There I have that stripy pattern and then I have this really cool label piece here. And I cut them both out just to cover the front of my mini slimline card. And I'm going to layer them because I think that looks really pretty. Now, originally when I was making this card, I actually had every intention of it being a landscape card. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, I changed my mind and made it a portrait style card. And I think at this point I had forgotten that I had already done 2 portrait style cards. So not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that I like to create, different styles of cards in these videos so you can see something different. And I just forgot that I had already done a couple of portrait style cards. So this originally was meant to be landscape, and for whatever reason I changed my mind and adhered the sentiment on so that it ends up being a portrait card as well. But I just adhered both of the pieces of pattern paper to the card panel that I cut out, which is the exact same size as the card front. This was just to give some more stability to the pattern paper, and because I wanted to put this piece of ribbon around it to hide the area where the 2 pattern papers are sitting together. Now this ribbon is from Stamping Up, I believe. I'm pretty sure my friend Kendra sent it to me a while ago when we did a trade of some goodies, and I'm pretty sure she sent it to me because I didn't actually have any ribbon in my stash. So I'm kind of trying to use up my ribbon now because it's just kind of a fun accent on card. So I just added a little piece going across the panel to just kind of mask where those 2 pieces of pattern paper touch. And then I'm just going to adhere this straight down to my base. You saw that I used some score tape to make sure that the ribbon stayed in place in the back there. And then I'm just going to adhere it straight down to the card front as it is the full size. So you don't really have to line it up as much as you would if I had matted it and given it layers. So for this case, I just adhered it straight down. And then I did bring in the sentiment, excuse me. I brought in the sentiment, the die sentiment that says "Miss You." I cut the shadow out of a heavyweight vellum and then the words "Miss You" out of the glitter cardstock. I do kind of wish I had cut out the shadow layer in white cardstock just because it would have stood out better. The vellum gets lost because it's pretty much on a white background outside of the ribbon. So in that, you don't really see that it has a shadow. So I do kind of wish that I had changed my mind there, but I didn't. So it is what it is. I don't think the card is bad by any means. It's just, had I thought about it, I might have changed how I put that together, but it worked out okay. And you saw that I ripped the edge of the U off of the letter U. It ripped when I tried to remove it from the paper there, the piece of glitter cardstock there. Not a big deal. I'm going to adhere the word down as you normally would. And then I'm just going to attach that little piece that ripped off. Not a huge issue at all. I think that it turned out really good. I don't even think you can tell, other than obviously I'm showing you guys that it ripped, but I don't even think you can tell that it did that. Like, I'm looking at the card now, and if I hadn't have known it had ripped, you wouldn't even know. So when I hold it up at the end, you'll see that it went on there perfectly fine, and you can't even tell that it actually happened. So I do use an acrylic block just to hold the letters down to the vellum. They didn't really want to adhere, so I did kind of add that weight to make sure that they did not lift off of the vellum. But again, I do wish I had used a piece of white cardstock, or maybe pink, maybe a light blue. Maybe that would have been better, just to kind of pull in a different color. But this is what I chose to use, so this is what I used. And here at this point, this is where I changed it into a portrait style card instead of a landscape style card. No idea why I did that. I just thought it would be fun, I suppose. And then my other supervisor shows up to make sure that I'm creating the card properly. So she hung out there with me while I added some sequins to the card. So for these ones, I brought in some Pink Fresh Essential Gems. These are the light pink out of that set. I love that set so much. It's just stunning, and it comes with a whole bunch of gems, which are totally my jam. And then I hold this up so you guys can check it out. I think it turned out really pretty, although in the end, I really wish I had stuck with my landscape plan, but what are you gonna do? I think it turned out pretty nice. And then for my next card, I'm gonna create an ATC. Now, if you guys have been with me for a little while, you'll know that I have a tendency towards ATCs. I think that they're really pretty. They're really fun. They're kind of a small size. And if you don't know what an ATC is, it is an artist trading card. So I did cut down my cardstock. It is the 2.5 by 3.5 inches. That is the only rule to an artist trading card. And then I had a really fun time just picking what part of the stamp set I wanted to stamp out. You could have chosen any piece of it. I chose this rose with the leaves coming off, and I am going to Copic color this. So I brought in 4 colors of Copic marker. I used the RV02, RV04, RV06, and RV17. And I chose a very vibrant color because I really, well, you'll see the picture and you would have seen it in the beginning, but I really wanted it to be very, very vibrant. That was kind of the purpose there. I mean, we've kind of played with more subtle colors, a little more pale in the color palette, a little more pastel. And I really wanted to have something vibrant because it just makes me so happy. So I intentionally picked very vibrant colors, and I always work through my colors lightest to darkest and then back through to blend. So that is what I'm doing here. I'm going to show you the one leaf while I do the pinks, and then I'm going to show you, the one petal. And then I'm going to show you a leaf using the green. So here you can see the rose is already colored. And here it doesn't look as good as it will when I do the black background. But right here, I mean, look at how vibrant that pink is. I think it's stunning. And for the leaf, I used G02, G16, G19, and G29. And again, I'm aiming for a vibrant leaf. Now, I brought in the G29 because I felt like the G19 wasn't dark enough. And I thought that it couldn't stand up to how vibrant the rose was. So I do end up bringing in this color just to add some deeper shadowing to the center of the leaf, because I think that it really added more vibrancy. And then this is where you really make those colors pop. And I have done this on cards before as well, and I think it always turns out stunning. So I have a C9, which is a very dark gray, cool gray, and I'm going to color in the background. Anywhere that there is white, we're going to color it in with this Copic marker. And I think that this really helps your vibrant colors pop, and it's really kind of a fun study. So, I mean, if you didn't want to use Copic markers, I mean, I'm practicing with my Copics. If that wasn't your thing, you could use pencil crayons, or you could use different markers, watercolors, whatever medium you want to do this with. I tend towards Copic markers because I have them, but I think this is a really fun way to pick a piece of the image and then kind of do like a color study on it. I mean, I intentionally went vibrant because this is the look I wanted for this. And how cool would this be to be in your artist trading card collection? Like, I think that it would just be so eye-catching, and it just jumps off the page. So, I mean, that's my thing towards it. If you prefer pastels, or you prefer, lighter colors, or, grays or browns, or whatever your thing is, that's just mine happen to be vibrant colors. So that is what I did here. And I did 2 layers of the black. I'm going to only show you one. And then I brought in my white gel pen just to add some detailing on the petals and the leaves. It's hard to see here, but you'll see it once I hold it up in the end. You'll get a better look at how that turned out. And there's no rhyme or reason as to where I actually add highlights. It's more just a feeling than anything, to be honest. I kind of just add them where I think they'll look good. That's pretty much the only thing I do there. And then of course, because again, we need all the glittery things, I'm going to bring in those same vanilla luster sequins and add them across the card, again from the top left corner to the bottom right. That's just how I like to do. There's no rhyme or reason. And then here I decided there wasn't enough sparkle. So I'm going to bring in my Spectrum Noir clear glitter pen. I'm going to have to buy a new one of those pretty soon because this one's actually getting pretty low. But I've had it for quite a while, so it does show you that they do last pretty long. But I'm going to add it to the deepest pink of all of the petals. And it's kind of just adding more to the shadows. Again, this is just because it's my thing. It doesn't need it. You could have left it at any step here, really, after you added the black or the really dark gray. And it would still look stunning. But this is just how I like to roll. So if you guys have been with me for a minute, you'll know that I love all of the sparkly, shiny things. And you should have done this before you added the sequins. However, I didn't. So I just painted around them and I'm really happy with it. I love how this turned out. I think it's super pretty. And then we're going to jump into the final card, which again is a pattern paper card. However, it is going to be a shaker card. Now, the thing with this shaker card is that I honestly made it a bit too tight. So when we get into making the pocket, I'll kind of tell you what I did there, but we're going to cut down the base. I again prefer mine to be 6 by 6 inches, scored at the 3-inch mark. And then I will also cut down some pattern paper. So I did... Yeah, I made it too tight. Like you're going to see when I go to try to shake it and show you the pocket, the sequins don't end up moving very much just because I adhered it too tightly to the back of the pattern paper. But here you can see that I'm going to use this really pretty mint green from the card kit. It's going to be my matte for the panel. And then I have that love, 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 love you, love. I guess it also just says love. Yeah, it just says love all over it. I have this love pattern paper that I'm going to cut a panel out to. And again, I round to about 1/8 of an inch on all of them. So the matte is about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my slimline base, and then the panel is about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my matte. That's just my general thing. I just like how that looks. And then I am going to create the pocket out of some leftover plastic packaging I have. I have a drawer I save all my packaging in when it starts to rip, so that it's super easy and I can just keep it and I recycle it. So I did just bring it and put it through my trimmer just because I find that gives me cleaner lines when I go to adhere them down to the back of the panel. So I am going to use, I believe I used 1/8 of an inch score tape for this because I made my pocket a bit smaller than I maybe should have. So I'm going to adhere all of the edges first. I do prefer to do it this way. So I'm going to do one layer at the bottom there with my tape, and then I adhere, like fold up the pocket and adhere that, and then I'll do along the edge and I'll fold up the plastic on that side, and then I'll do the other long side, and I usually leave the top part open, or I guess I leave whatever the top of the card is. And again, in this case it's a profile or a portrait as opposed to a landscape, so I do end up leaving the top of the card open. And then again, I'm going to adhere this art. You did see me bring in my scissors there, and that's just to trim off the corner of the plastic because they overlap, and then it kind of bows up. So I do trim that off just to keep it from holding it from adhering at the end. So that's the only reason I did that there. And then again, I'm going to put the adhesive down, but I won't seal it until we've already put the pieces in. But there you can see there's the pocket. So I brought in some Sizzix Gold Love Struck sequins. They're just a flat back gold. They're not even really a sequin. They're just like a flat circle embellishment, I guess. These came in a kit a long time ago. I just thought that these would look really cool in here, and of course they're super flat. So here you can see that I'm kind of struggling a bit to get those I'm going to call them sequins, embellishments to move, just because I did make this a little bit tighter than I maybe should have. But I mean, it's a flat shaker. They do still move. They just don't move a lot. So, I mean, it's not a big deal. And then you saw me bring in, I believe it was about 1/2 inch score tape, and that's just to adhere down the panel to the mat. And then I bring in my Nuvo Deluxe glue to actually adhere the panel down to the card base. I use score tape on the back of my pocket just because I find that it's less likely to lift and it's more likely to hold any of the edges down if I did not adhere it perfectly. That's just a preference for me. You can use liquid glue, although I find it's vastly better if you use something stronger, just in case it lets go. And then out of the pattern paper here, I saw this really cool bottom of one of the other images, and it just says "Sending my love." And since the card, the whole inside just says the word love over and over and over, I thought that this was pretty fitting. So I trimmed that down into a label, and then I trimmed one end off, and then I'm going to create kind of a fishtail banner. So that's super easy. I just cut straight through the center, and then I angled from each edge into that center cut. I hope that kind of makes sense. I don't own any dies that create banners. I know there are tons of them out there. I just don't own any, so I just make my own. And I am going to bring in some thin 3D foam squares to adhere this straight down to the front of this card. And I don't add any other embellishments to this card. I know, shocking, but because it's already a shaker and because there's already things kind of going on, I did just kind of leave it like this. And then here you see when I try to get the I'm going to call them sequins again, the sequins to come down from the top there, they're all kind of stuck a little bit. So, I mean, you don't get as much shake out of this one as I had kind of hoped, but I think that it still turned out pretty cute. So did you have a favorite card? I would love to hear it if you did. Let me know in the comments, or leave me a like, leave me a comment, tell me anything you want to say. I love to read them. I answer them all. I really appreciate you guys. So that is the extra card for this week, or set of cards. I will have a new video for you again on Monday. So I will see you again very soon. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye for now.